Hello everybody, how are we doing? Hello everybody, how are we doing? Hello everybody, how are we doing? Oh, it doesn't seem... Okay, good, we are streaming. Hello. Right, okay, so, 1 second. Let me just sort absolutely everything out. Floppy ears and curly whiskers, floppy ears. And curly whiskers, floppy ears and curly whiskers, something. Squats, I thought you said let's do shots. It's funny because I drink. I mean, I don't drink. It would be funny if I... Alright, everyone. Give me one good reason not to jump into the Caelan Conrad video immediately. You can't? Fine, we'll do it. Oh, wait, actually, sorry, I do need to sort some stuff out. I thought I'd, so I'm sorting stuff out. You know, like, obviously, that's why... So just filter in while I'm sorting some stuff out. Just want to make sure on the... Gonna get rid of this. And... Alright, stop. Collaborate and listen. Something grabs a hold of me tightly. My favorite actor in Pirates of the Caribbean is Keira Knightley. Boom. Orlando Bloom's okay. Oh, doig. I was just like moving my camera. Okay, so we're switching to the good camera. I can't think of any reason not to. Everything should be fine. Okay. Hey, that's a bit weird. Oh, I know why. Okay. If I restart it, does it work? There we go. That's what we want. Okay. So, no one's commented yet, which I'm very offended by. So we're switching to this. And let's see if this actually works. Oh, we got to do the thing. So, we are in focus. So we do. The pigeon in my garden, I believe, survived, which is nice. Down you go. I was using pillars last time, which I think did help, but whatever. 8 people here. Okay. You know what? I guess I might as well do the intro just before people kind of show up. So, hello everybody. This is I don't even know what part of my response to Caelan Conrad's video on how the gender critical movement is apparently a cult. Obviously, we're far enough into it that I don't think we need to worry about the fact that the central claim of the video is actually going to be evidence. I think we can confidently declare at this point that it has not been. So yeah, at this point, I guess we're just in it for fun. So stick along. Stick along? It goes like, come along and stick around. You get me? Boom. I nailed that. Someone says, what does my shirt say? T-shirt say? My T-shirt says, squats. I thought you said, let's do shots. It was literally the first thing I commented on, but it was when no one was around. So, and I pointed out that I actually don't drink. And to be honest, I haven't really been doing squats recently. I tell you what, does it not look like super luminous right now? I don't know why that, like, it's really just like... Where's my water? Where's my water? Oh, here it is. So yeah, I guess we're just going to jump in. Okay. Just a brief note. Oh, I thought I was zoomed in. Okay. The, like, I know what it is we're on the level of responding to. Yeah. I have quite a few shirts. So yeah, I know what we're responding to, and like, it's a big one. It's a whopper. So Let me tell you, it's a whopper even for the king. It's like a Burger King joke, right? Well, that works, right?
Detransitioner. If I had believed there were only two genders,
Wait, where are we?
that my experiences with gender were different from what I was hearing from binary trans people. I was lucky to be able to do this almost 20 years ago and have freely explored my gender and gender presentation since then. And now that I feel comf and co's, my identity as non-binary, I'm no longer dreaming of my stansition into Xena or Faith from Buffy. I'm a destansitioner. If I had believed there were only two genders or sexes,
Wait. I like the little note. Like again, this isn't going in the actual kind of edit, but
I'm a destansitioner.
which is let's actually see the thing is I want to say again, like I said it before last time, there was a joke and I said I liked that joke. I think that's kind of a clever joke too. I'm a destansitioner. Like, well done. That's a good joke. Like genuinely, I really do believe in credit where it's due, and I think destansitioner. It's like a funny pun. Well done. Good rhyme. This is the pun on the word but I like how Caelan felt the need to explain this. This is a pun on the words stan and transition. I haven't ever experienced detransition and don't want to make light of it. I mean, okay, like I can understand, like at least that's coming from a place of like not wanting to, I guess, aggravate detransitioners, which is kind of nice because it's compared to so much of the trans identity movement that wants to attack and ostracize detransitioners, much like a cult. Like disassociating from those who leave the cult. Uh, but yeah, I can appreciate the fact there's an attempt here to be like, hey, I don't want to make fun of it, but it's just like, yeah, you can make a pun, and you don't have to like put a little disclaimer there. It's just kind of silly.
If I had believed there were only two genders or sexes, like gender critical people preach, who knows what road I would have taken. I'm not going to pull a JK Rowling and be like, I had anxiety, so they would have transed me. I'm just saying that understanding I could be just me and fuck around, be genderqueer, that meant I felt way less pressure to conform to anybody's expectations of womanhood or manhood. And hiding that information from me wouldn't have led me to be any more cis. It would have just led me to have made decisions based on an uninformed and ignorant understanding of the world. That's never a good thing. Gender critical people claim that transition is serious and permanent and disfiguring, but then think something that serious should be decided without all the information? What the fuck kind of advice is that? How is that grooming or indoctrinating someone? And anyone who claims that educating children about the real world we live in will lead to the fall of society is someone you should have very little trust in.
Okay, so this is the claim I find interesting. Basically, this is arguing that gender critical people are against educating children about the real world we live in. Now, there are two ways to interpret that statement. So I want to interpret the two possible ways, just so I'm covering all my bases. I'll say up front what the two ways are. The first way would be that it's basically just saying the real world we live in terms of there are people who make this claim. And the second one would be the real world we live in terms of trans identities and non-binary identities are actually valid and actually describe the real world. So those are the two ways of interpreting it. So I'm going to deal with the claim of just like it's saying, well, people believe this thing. Now, there are a few obvious issues with this. The most immediate one being that just because people believe something, well, the obvious, first of all, that doesn't make it correct. Like, I think we're all pretty clear on that. But the other thing is, it doesn't mean that we should teach it to children. Like, yeah, sometimes we should teach children about stuff, but obviously, we, for example, might not want to teach children, at least uncritically, that people believe the world is flat. Like, sure, that's a part of the real world we live in. Just because there are people who make that claim doesn't mean we need to teach children about people making that claim. But this leads to the other thing, which is, of course, that actually, I would say gender critical people aren't necessarily against teaching children about the reality of trans identity, but they might perhaps want to present it either one, neutrally. I think a lot of gender critical people would be okay with that, but also negatively and critically, which would still be teaching children about the real world we live in. Like, if by the real world we live in, you just mean that there are people who identify as trans, well, gender critical people aren't necessarily against teaching children that. So one, even if they were, that wouldn't be a problem because there's many things we don't teach children, and you would have to make an argument for why, like just saying this is a facet of reality is not a justification for teaching people about it. Because of course there are many facets of reality which, I mean, you might not think it's appropriate to teach children. Because it could misinform them. Like, for example, teaching children that people believe the earth is flat. Well, if you're doing that, then like that's something children honestly just don't even need to know because it's just such a wild out there claim, which I frankly believe is equivalently spurious as the claim that a biological male can be a woman. So the point is, one, it's not hypocritical to not teach children, or not necessarily inappropriate to not teach children about these things, because there's only a limited number of things we can teach children. So of course we're going to have to be discerning in terms of what we actually teach them. But two is that gender critical people aren't necessarily against teaching children about this stuff, because one, like I say, they might say, well, we should teach this neutrally. We can teach children that there are people who believe that they are trans, but let's not teach children that there are people who believe that they're trans and that they're bigots if they don't accept this identity, or that they might have trans identities too, or things like that. Like we can teach children that people believe stuff without teaching them that thing is true. But the other thing is, of course, that we might want to teach children about trans identity with the express purpose of teaching them why it's nonsense and why it's absurd and why it doesn't make any sense. And you'll notice that is still teaching them about the real world we live in. It's still teaching them about people making this claim. It's just also explaining why that claim is nonsense. So this whole idea that gender critical people are against teaching children about the real world we live in terms of a facet of the real world we're living in, being that there are people who identify as trans, seems to be an entirely invalid point. Now, the second possibility is that, like I say, actually we need to teach children that trans identities are valid. And of course, the problem there is that it's simply a claim that hasn't been evidenced. And, kind of the analogy I'd make there is that it would be like a Christian saying, we need to teach kids, like basically saying atheists don't want to teach kids about the real world we live in. With the, I guess, implication being that atheists don't want to teach kids that the Christian theology and the kind of God of the Bible and the narrative of the Bible is true. And saying, and therefore they're not teaching about the real world we live in. And of course you can see the issue that the obvious response to that would be, well, sure, but the obvious response would be, and you can see the issue that the obvious response to that would be, well, why are you saying that's the real world we live in? Like saying you don't want to teach kids about the real world we live in, unless you're talking about something entirely uncontroversial, you have to evidence that you're actually advocating for teaching children about the real world we live in. And I would say this, yes, if you are teaching kids that biological males can be women and that people can be non-binary and that your sex can change and whatever else, then you aren't teaching children about the real world we live in. So overall, I mean, it's a nonsense point no matter how you look at it. And I just thought it was worth pointing out how nonsense it is.
It is not harmful to teach the true history of colonialism in the US. It is not harmful to teach children about safer sex. It is not indoctrination to tell children the truth, that some people are trans or gay or whatever.
Okay, you know what? So there we go. There we get a specific clarification. That it's not harmful to teach children, the kids, the truth that some people are trans. Now, again, to be fair, the point kind of still stands because some people use the term trans to mean trans-identified. Now, for me, I use the term trans to mean actually transitioning from a man to a woman. And of course, therefore, I would say that actually people aren't trans. There is no trans person because nobody has transitioned from being a man to a woman. So again, I would say that it's not teaching children the truth that people are trans. Having said that, if perhaps the claim is just teaching kids that there are people who identify as trans, well, sure, we can teach children that, but we can teach them that without uncritically promoting trans identity as accurate, and indeed we could even teach them that while disaffirming trans identity and explaining why it's nonsense. So it's, you can see it's basically an irrelevant point. Pretty much no matter where you fall on the trans identity debate, you can still teach kids about the reality that there are people who identify as trans. So it's neither here nor there.
What is indoctrination is to intentionally withhold information to create an image of the world not based on reality, presented as reality anyways. It's a form of mind control.
Yeah, who does this? I don't know any gender critical person who intentionally withholds information. Like, who? What information are gender critical people withholding? I have no idea.
thought control. By strictly controlling access to information from outside the cult, you prevent the youth from being able to make informed, consensual decisions about their life and health.
I would like to point something out, okay? So the thing is, this is obviously relating it to being a cult, but one of the things about a cult is that a cult does this to adults as well. So the problem is, you'll notice this is specifically talking about children because, okay, yes, children might have that access to certain information suppressed by their parents who have authority over them. But it's worth noting, the family, despite the fact that parents have authority over their children, is not a cult. That's just something that can, that's obviously, I wouldn't agree with that kind of thing of like limiting your children's access to information, but it's not a cult. The thing is, a cult is when you start getting adults in hierarchical positions of authority limiting the kind of availability of information for other adults. So that's the issue. This is not really cult-like. Now, with that said, of course, yes, when you're talking about adults, of course, the gender critical movement does not limit anybody's access to information. I mean, right now, like, of course, it's literally a joke, isn't it? Because here I am watching this entire video all the way through. If somebody wanted to tune in or go back and watch every single one of these live streams, they would see every single thing that Caelan Conrad has said. Admittedly, a portion of it at 1.5 speed, but I'm sure they can manage that. Yeah, like the reality is people could see everything Caelan has said on my channel. And I'm quite a large gender critical channel, so there you go, point refuted. But yeah, if you're going to say, like, make the point specific to children, well, sure, maybe people will limit what their children have access to because that's something parents are able to do. That doesn't make it a cult. But even then, I would ask, well, what actually are parents limiting their children's access to? I would say, again, the problem is that if your kid is like on some kind of groomer Discord, yeah, you'll probably want to limit their access to that Discord, but it's disingenuous to act as if that's limiting your child's access to information that will inform them about how the world really is. No, the creepy person DMing them on Discord is not some fount of knowledge that they're missing out on. It's some creepy person who, people shouldn't be allowed to talk to anybody's kids.
It is an incredible abuse of power over someone under your care to not only, as we've seen, lie to and manipulate the child, but to isolate them from humanity itself, from reality, the whole time telling them they're just confused, they've been indoctrinated, locked up, and left alone for their own good until they stop acting that way. It's the fucking definition of gaslighting. The actual one, not the one gender critical people use. And the sickest part is that these people have legal authority over these children and actively avoid CPS, meaning they aren't being held to any of the legal obligations of being a parent, like not fucking abusing your kids.
I mean, anyone can avoid, the law. I mean, I say anyone can. Like, people avoiding the law is just like a fact of life. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know why you complain about it. You should complain about CPS, I don't know, like, not doing what you want them to do more effectively. But you can't be like, I don't know, it's just like, you're basically just complaining that the law enforcement isn't doing as good. Which, whatever. Content warning, suicide.
The only saving grace here is that for kids with homophobic or transphobic parents is that kids grow up eventually. Almost every parent will lose their control. And every single one of these children that makes it out alive is eventually going to be able to make these decisions for themselves. And it's so important to...
I suppose I should make the obvious joke in response to kids grow up eventually. Well, a lot of the time it seems not trans activists. There we go.
Tell these kids that are suffering and alone that there can be an after to this, because not all of them make it out alive. And I understand what it's like to feel like every path you have in front of you leads to the same place. I used to tell myself there was no way out but down, and I believed it. Everyone needs to know there's a light at the end of the tunnel, which was the entire point of the It Gets Better campaign that Dan Savage started, that Maria Kepler's little friend was railing against. These children are left feeling the genuine searing emptiness of hopelessness at like 12 fucking years old. And anyone who attempts to comfort them is called a groomer, a predator coming in between families. But they always leave one thing out, every single time. Why? Why the It Gets Better campaign started. They talk about it like it was a hashtag or a recruitment tool put out to ensnare their children. Why? Because their kids were fucking killing themselves. Leila Alcorn's parents followed the same method of isolation outlined in Maria Keffler's book, and it led her to walk off a fucking bridge. In her last words,
Oh, Naked HD, you're back. Well, that's interesting, actually. Because I thought I'd defeated you. I truly did think I'd gotten rid of you once and for all. We're going to have to fiddle a bit. Yeah, I thought I had, you know, I swear I'd like blocked, like, because you weren't here last time. So why have you appeared again? Let me look into this. I don't like how this is being kind of slow. You know what, I'm gonna shut some of this stuff down. Close. For ages, I've had like some YouTube tabs open for different channels that I was thinking about like interviewing at some point. But that was kind of when I was really kind of thinking about leaning into the whole interviewing people thing. Kind of like nowadays, like I'll do it if I need to, but it's a whole thing. Oy vey. I feel like yeah, I literally like because the thing is I did the whole blocked words thing, and it actually seemed to work. Hey. Why does it seem to? Oh wait, do we have an echo? Are we echoing? Look. Oh, okay, good. Um, I had okay, so I go into settings. I'm really confused because I swear I like literally had, like I blocked. Let's see, what did I block? Community. It's me. It's been slow. So I blocked certain words. I think somehow. How did I do it? Do they change their names? No. So how did I? Is it because they're naked HD dots? Well, you know what, Rad Mum? I thought it wasn't going to be. So, like, I've changed it now to. I wonder what it used to be. Is it just because they've added a dot to their name to avoid the last name? I'm gonna also Google like get rid of XYZ. We'll see if it works. I don't know if it avoids it because it's in their name, but it seemed to work, which was interesting. Right, we'll see if it does anything. Okay. Okay. It's a shame the chat's so dead. It means that oh wait, I do want to find love. But you know what? I honestly believe you will. If I had some advice to people who want to find love, I think okay. If I had to give some advice to find love, it would be this. Go onto I think it's gotta be Omegle. I just don't know what else would work. So okay, go onto Omegle and go onto the like thing where you can organize it by like categories or like interests. And then I would say your best bet probably is to put in books. Because I feel like that would work, you know? Because I feel like you'd meet like obviously you'd have to stroll through, you know, a bunch of horny dudes. But like it wouldn't be that hard to find somebody who's like a nice person. I just like basically the thing is I think you should put some kind of interest in there because otherwise you're just gonna get like all sorts going on. But I feel like that's got to be some good like a good plan. Um, I mean, alternatively, you have a massive advantage if you're religious because then you can just put in your religion, and then you'll meet somebody who's the same religion as you, which would be good. But yeah, so I mean, I guess actually that's a good tip right there. Become a Christian, and then I mean, honestly, like at that point, you can go to church, loads of nice boys at church, or if you're a girl, loads of nice men. No, I already said that. Wait, what am I on about? If you're a boy, oh my goodness, I'm all over the place. If you're a boy or a lesbian, well, I can't even remember what order I'm saying this in. Basically, whoever you're attracted to, there'll be a nice version of that person at church. So there's my advice. If you want to find love, like maybe I should start a little bot. Yeah, it would be become a Christian and go to church, and you'll almost certainly meet someone who's very nice there. Like I don't know. I can't imagine like unless you I don't know live in Westboro. I assume that's an actual place that for which Westboro Baptist Church is named. But yeah, not a Catholic church though. Don't do that. I would say probably. Well, it could be mainline. Really, any of the kind of Protestant. I mean, not Anglican. Really, I know you could do Anglican. Like if your main goal is just to find love, you can do Anglican, Methodist, Presbyterian, Baptist. They're all good. How did you meet yours? I found mine on Omegle on the Christianity tag. So there you go. All right, we got to jump through this. I mean, we got to get some progress here. Anglican doesn't care if you're gay, right? Or someone says, "What is it about Christians?" You mean like about them being nice? I think part of it is just like they're not as ingrained with the kind of culture, um, and the culture right now is pretty awful. So I just feel like I don't know, like if I were to imagine like all of these, so let's say like so I was at uni, but I also went to a church at uni, and like the kind of density of just like horrible kind of guys that I would never recommend any girl dates at like just in university in general was uh, uh, like really high, like a really high percentage. And then you compare that to like church, where I mean, I got to know a lot of like the people even better. Like honestly, there was like one guy who I found kind of annoying because I didn't agree with him politically. But apart from that, like literally, they're all just like so nice, and they all have like normal interests, like you know, movies and books and hiking, and like not in like the fake way where people put it on their Tinder profile but they don't actually do it, but like the actual way. Um, yeah, I like how you're nostalgic for the higher purpose rather than the eligible bachelors slash bachelorettes. Um, I've made several friends in Amigo. Yeah, someone said Anglican doesn't care if you're gay, right? Yeah, Anglican doesn't care. I mean, I think it's still a contentious issue. There are. I mean, I think I would reckon almost every single denomination there are some gay affirming churches. I mean, even Catholic somehow, which I don't get because like the whole point of Catholicism is you're supposed to be subordinate to the Church of Rome. Whatever. Um, but yeah, like there are definitely like I think PC USA, Presbyterian Church USA, is gay affirming. Um, I think there are some Baptist churches that are gay affirming. It's all kind of all over the place though. I mean, I would say I guess like the question is if you want to meet like I mean, so I would say like if you want to meet somebody else who's also gay or lesbian, that's going to be a challenge, but I think mostly just a challenge because of like, ooh, well, okay, I guess it's two things. One, the absence, like the lack of the number of people, you know, because it's like I feel like you have to cast a broader net if you're gay, because the chances are like you might meet a whole load of cute guys who you really love, but how many of them are actually going to be gay? You know, like I could send you into a room and say, you know what, that room has all of the hottest guys, but I can't, you know, say that they be gay. Um, so that's kind of a challenge. Definitely being gay or lesbian is playing things on hard mode. Um, what else was I about to say? Um, being gay, it's harder if you're gay. I guess that was it. Oh no, sorry. The other thing was going to be that yeah, I remember. The other thing was going to be that I feel like it would be hard because I feel like a lot of Christians act kind of gay anyway. Because like, first of all, a lot of them are quite nice. They're also not like super, like they're also quite reserved about their sexuality. And I feel like most gay people are also quite reserved about their sexuality because they don't like, because they're aware of the fact there are some people who would still stigmatize being gay. So they'd be like, you know, oh, I don't. So they just kind of be like, oh, you know, like they wouldn't be all out there like, oh, look at that, you know, like being super overly sexual. So that's a big crossover between the church and gay people. And yeah, I don't know. I just, and also, okay, I guess the other thing is they'll have more female friends. Like, you know, church, I'd say like most people who go to church, it's pretty like it's pretty kind of mixed gender kind of situation. Like all of my female friends I had were from having gone to church. So, you know, and obviously gay guys have loads of female friends. There's a massive crossover. You know, like if you just put a random guy in front of me and say, is this guy a church going Christian or a gay person? I would be like, I don't know. It's literally impossible to tell the difference. You know, like how could you tell the difference? Oh, okay. There was no chance that this play button was going to work. I've been off it for way too long.
She talks about in depth what it was like to live with anti-trans parents. She cites all the same tactics they use, how horrible it felt. She was rejected, denied therapy unless it was someone who was anti-trans. She said they took me out of public school, took away my laptop and my phone, and forbid me of getting on any social media, completely isolating me from my friends. These are all suggested into this detrans detox. This was probably the part of my life when I was the most depressed, and I'm surprised I didn't kill myself. I was completely alone for 5 months. No friends, no support, no love, just my parents' disappointment and the cruelty of loneliness. Eventually, Leela just pretended to not be trans any longer, just to get out of that isolation and be around people who cared about her. Only in those 5 months of not being able to see or talk to her friends, their relationships had fallen apart. She felt utterly alone and trapped in a body that felt permanent after being forced to go through the wrong puberty. She just didn't see a way out. She didn't think that it would get better for her, that it could, but she still hoped it would for other people. I think she would have been an amazing advocate. The only way I will rest in peace is if one day transgender people aren't treated the way I was. They're treated like humans with valid feelings and human rights. Gender needs to be taught about in schools. The earlier, the better. My death needs to mean something. My death needs to be counted in the number of transgender people.
You know how like some people will say like that like trans people are narcissists? I just like it's really difficult not to hear like with Caelan Conrad's kind of like whiny voice to hear like my death needs to mean something. It's kind of like, okay, look, you know, we can't all be martyrs.
Who commit suicide this year. I want someone to look at that number and say, that's fucked up, and fix it. Fix society, please. After Leela's suicide, a post on Reddit was found to have been posted by her. She had a question. Is this considered abuse? My parents never let me around my friends. I've gone out with my friends 3 times in the last year because every time my parents cancel last minute and make me do something else. She outlines the isolation her parents put her through, but says she doesn't know if it counts as abuse because she wasn't physically beaten. People offered support, told her it would get better, but she just couldn't see it. 2 days after Leela's death, her mother gave an interview to CNN. She used Leela's dead name and misgendered her. She said that she didn't support Leela being transgender, but we told him that we loved him unconditionally. Neighbors who the parents saw as antagonists started speaking up against Leela's parents. Leela went to school with my children, and Leela expressed her utter devastation when Leela's parents, upon learning she was gay, yanked Leela from school, confiscated Leela's cell phone, deleted Leela's Facebook profile, and isolated Leela in her bedroom. She was no longer permitted to associate with my son, who shared classes with Leela. My son supported Leela's coming out and was one of the few people who knew about Leela's transgender issues. Leela was always kind and soft-spoken around.
I mean, look, I'm just gonna point out the obvious thing that because I should probably edit this flow a little better because like the thing was made about like the whole this all happened when the parents found out that this person was gay, which would seem to imply this was an example of basically, kind of transing away the gay. Not from the parents, but I just mean from like society in general, where this was somebody who was previously like a gay male. Well, I mean, was for the entirety of their life a gay male, and then later on the whole trans thing happened. But I just wanted to point out to be like, obviously, no gender critical person would support no gender critical person would view it as a problem if their child was gay, which is just obvious. Like, this is not an example of a gender critical person. This is an example of somebody who seems to be some sort of traditionalist conservative. Which, I mean, yeah, don't be like, it literally doesn't matter if your kid's gay. It's just that simple. It does matter if your kid starts talking nonsense about being born in the wrong body, because truth matters objectively. And I suppose I would just say on that note, obviously, it's very sad that this person took their own life, but it's literally as irrelevant as if you told me that a kid took their own life because their parents kept telling them that the earth wasn't flat, and deep down they really knew it was flat, and they knew that the government, all the globe manufacturers had been lying, and actually, yeah, like literally, I'm just sat there like, okay, like it's sad they killed themselves, but they killed themselves apparently based on their belief in a completely nonsense thing, and that is what it is. Hello, Misa Lachelle. Where are we? I can't find the actual. There we go.
Around me. I deeply regret that Leela was forbidden to visit our home because my family has always wholeheartedly accepted Leela without judgment. And maybe, just maybe, this tragedy would have not occurred if we could have shown our love and support for Leela. She was only 17.
Okay. For the minute, the like adult children was like a bit weird because I was like, okay, are they admitting that's what they are? And like, okay, I get it. So like, in the sense that even when we're adults, we're still the children of our parents. It was just a bit of a weird, phrase saying like adult children.
It's not up for debate whether gender-critical ideology has parents isolating and penalizing their children for their gender and sexuality. But what I think...
Wait a minute. No, look, if you're gender critical, like, I mean, again, obviously I've kind of spoken before about how there's like a kind of broad definition of gender critical and then a slightly more restricted definition of gender critical. I'm going to stick with the more restricted definition because I think that's the most relevant when talking about kind of the like being gender critical as a movement. Because, of course, Matt Walsh and J.K. Rowling are not part of the same movement. The radical feminists, kind of liberals, progressives, various people who are concerned about women's sex-based rights and concerned about abolishing or otherwise kind of limiting the relevance of gender stereotypes and, kind of masculinity and femininity as kind of relevant social forces in the world, have no movements that they share with social traditionalists and conservatives, except for maybe one of kind of cynical convenience. Like it might be the case that some conservatives do align themselves with gender critical feminists because they're like, oh, this helps me achieve my limited goals, which, whatever. I mean, we'll see how that works out for them. I hope not particularly well. But with that said, if you are gender critical, then well, let me put it this way. If you try to penalize or in any way respond negatively to the reality of your child's sexuality, you aren't gender critical. There is no, because of course, the idea that like sexuality is basically just kind of the idea of if you are a man, are you attracted to women or men? And the idea of kind of heteronormativity is an extension of gender. So you can't be gender critical without also being critical of heteronormativity. And yeah, so obviously it would be completely hypocritical of me as a gender critical person to not expect and to some degree actively discourage my hypothetical, for example, son from engaging with and acting out traditional masculinity, only to then turn around and say, oh, but you have to go and get a girlfriend and be attracted to women because that's what a man is supposed to do. So yeah, I mean, pretty simple. There is no such thing as a gender critical homophobe, except for maybe allowing for an extreme degree of cognitive dissonance that they need to sort out.
Gets lost is that people think child means young. I'm 30 to 35, and I'm someone's child still. And gender critical parents do not stop abusing their children just because they're adults. Of course, most of their public rhetoric is simply that children are too young to know better. They don't hate trans people. But if that were true, their children being a trans adults should be okay with them. But it never is. But how do you even wield that same authoritarian control when your child is now old enough to make their own decisions, when they go off to university, or they're just not even living with you? What if you were to come into a group like this with a concern about that? Can they really say that parent should try and stop their now adult child from transitioning? Wouldn't that undermine their entire public-facing position? I mean, of course, but taking any issue with that would require some ideological consistency, which they have in, what's the opposite of abundance? Let's use an actual example. A post made by a group member that I'll be calling Dorothy, who I'm not a friend of.
Tonight my son said he wants hormones, and I simply can't cope with the idea. I'm so upset I can't function. I've been up all night crying. I'm a single mum of an autistic child, and just a couple of weeks ago went up to his orientation at college feeling so great about what he'd accomplished and what I'd accomplished as a mum getting him there. Now it's all crashing and burning, and my daughter hates me, thinks I'm a monster because there's nothing wrong with cutting off boobs and penises if you don't want them. And I'm being called cis. It's turned into a living hell. I just can't stand the idea of my gorgeous son ruining his body. He says it's his body, and that I'm sick for feeling this way. But it feels like a death. And being a liberal person my whole life, it just makes me feel like a piece of garbage to not be able to handle this. I would have been fine with him being gay, but destroying?
There you go. I would have been fine. So this is an actual gender critical person. I would have been fine with him being gay. The only thing I don't like is him making surgical alterations to his body based on his belief in nonsense, which is totally legit. I mean, like, heck, like, genuinely, if my kid was like, I want, say kid, like, let's say I had an adult kid, so I guess I'd be a great deal older than I am now, and they said, you know what, I really want to get circumcised. I would be like, why? And then they said, I don't know, some kind of nonsense. I'd be like, well, that's stupid. Like, that's the thing. Like, and again, that's talking about something which isn't even, in the grand scheme of things, that harmful. Like, certainly there are, I guess, fewer complications and kind of negative effects from circumcision than there are from all of the kind of biological sex denying surgery that trans-identified people typically get. So yeah. Um, yeah, sorry, I just wanted to read some of the comments because I wasn't okay. Yeah.
His big, strong body with female hormones disgusts me. I wish I could feel halfway decent about the transition, but I can't. After years of fighting for custody, working 2 jobs and having no life for myself, doing everything for my kids, I have to live with this now? I can't.
It's kind of interesting to me actually that just okay, like this is just a minor point, and I don't really care. But it's interesting that this guy apparently, the mum had to fight for custody, implying that maybe there wasn't like an actual father in this person's life. I wonder if that's relevant. I don't know. Just seems like I could see that being a thing. Um, with regards to deciding you don't want to be like a boy anymore. I can imagine that like leading to some messed up ideas.
Can't imagine how I'll be able to work as hard as I need to paying for his college now that I know this. It's so conflicting. I wish I could just snap my fingers and feel good about affirming his gender choice. Non-binary with feminization. It just doesn't feel right. But the more I talk to him about it, the more I realise how committed he is to it, and that I simply got to the party late.
Just so you have the context I do from other posts, I know that Dorothy's kid is in med school and also requested a trans roommate, like dorm mate, to make sure both people in the dorm felt comfortable. Dorothy, if you're watching this, I'm going to break down why this entire post is royally fucked up.
I'm so upset I can't function.
She said two sis to function.
Now it's all crashing and burning.
So everything isn't crashing and burning. Your child is in fucking med school. They're doing great, making a life as an adult independent from your identity, as all adults must.
Look, I mean, look. At the end of the day, here's the thing. Like, in some sense, I'm always dispassionate about these kind of things. So I just like to say, well, they're believing nonsense. That's stupid. I don't usually, but like, imagining the kind of, I guess, emotional investment that comes in that comes in your children. That seems weird. How do I phrase it? Considering the emotional investment one would have in their children as a mother, combined with the idea of being presented with a completely incoherent notion of trans identity. And then on top of that, the kind of, I think, abusive presentation of that often being accompanied with kind of this emotional manipulation and gaslighting. I mean, first of all, I think if you're presenting total nonsense to somebody and insisting it makes sense, I think that's gaslighting in itself. Like, if you are a man, a biological male, saying to a woman that you are a woman, I think that's intrinsically gaslighting, because like you are make because what is gaslighting? It's kind of convincing somebody that they should believe something which they know not to be true, causing somebody to doubt their own conception of reality. And that's what you're doing when you say to somebody who is a woman because they are biologically female that in fact actually no, being a woman isn't it has nothing to do with being biologically female. It's literally like, we have always been at war with East Asia. Like, oh no, it's just it's nonsense. So that, and then also kind of the kind of additional level of abuse, which is like, oh, kind of the emotional manipulation of you are literally killing me by not agreeing with me. You put all of that together, and you realize how messed up it is of Caelan Conrad to be making fun of and attacking and judging this woman for the mental state she's currently in. And would I say that, oh, it's a bit kind of like emotional to say, oh, everything's crashing and burning because I just like to sit on my on my little chair and just make fun of trans identity from a distance and be very dispassionate about it. But yeah, if this was actually something you're experiencing firsthand, yeah, that's really gonna be a difficult thing to deal with. And it's just, yeah, it's really gross for Caelan to make fun of that.
Seeing what works for them. Your child's younger sister seems to be a great sibling who is protective and supportive. Most parents would be fucking thrilled, right?
My daughter hates me, thinks I'm a monster because there's nothing wrong with cutting off boobs and penises if you don't want them. And I'm being called cis.
And I'm being called cis.
It's turned into a living hell.
And your daughter doesn't hate you for what you think in your head about gender-related surgeries. If she does hate you, it's because of what you say and do and how you act. In fact, you were only describing yourself in an active role when you were working to support your kids and doing everything for them or been up all night crying. If you hadn't been voicing these actions, she would know. Your inability to accept responsibility for your own actions while painting.
I'll say this, I don't think this person's AGP. I think if they were AGP, they would have made slightly more effort. Or are you talking about the kid? Because I wasn't sure. I thought maybe you were talking about Caelan. I don't think Caelan's AGP, because I think there's a very notable absence of actual attempt to look like or present particularly feminine at all. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the kid is AGP though. That would seem entirely probable.
Painting yourself as a passive victim is a pretty clear-cut example of actual narcissism.
I just can't stand the idea of my gorgeous son ruining his body. He says it's his body and that I'm sick for feeling this way.
If your child is saying, hey, the way you talk about my body is sick, maybe take a fucking hint. Your obsession with your adult child's genitalia is disturbing. Your adult child is setting boundaries about their body and your language, and you're refusing to respect.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that whole thing about treating, they treat mums like servants. No, you don't have to kowtow to every single thing your kid says. If your kid is saying that you're being sick because all you're doing is continuing to be attached to reality, then you don't need to take a hint. Your kid needs to sort out the nonsense in their head. It's not the job of mums to be servants to their kids in any way. Never mind going along with even that which is obviously not true. If your kid tells you something that's not true, it's not your job to believe them and say that it's true.
Respect them.
And being a liberal person my whole life, it just makes me feel like a piece of garbage.
That one's fair. You should feel like garbage for being a liberal. Real left is best, Mama D.
Look, I don't care, but this person's a liberal. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say every single trans-affirming person is a liberal. Marx wouldn't stand for this stuff. My boy Stalin and Mao wouldn't stand for this stuff. It's just these people, basically, I feel like these people conflate being kind of anti-liberal with being performatively communists. But they're not. They're not actually communists. Indeed, I would always tend to suspect most likely funded by some kind of, at least indirectly, anti-communist interest, because it's very good to present to kids the kind of the people who are watching kind of BreadTube, this vision of communism and anti-capitalism that literally has no substance to it except for arguing over kind of ideological notions, idealism, definitions, the idea that you are whatever you say you are in your head, all that kind of stuff, and of course moving away from material reality. There are, again, and I always go back to this fact because I just find it really funny. Yes, there are gender critical people who are libs, but if you want to talk about peak gender critical, or rather, so peak, I'm using peak, obviously I realize peak is often used for peak trans. If you want to talk about somebody who is very prominent as a gender critical person and also very prominent as a lib, J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling is a massive lib, and she's also very prominent as a gender critical person. And as I always like to point out, by J.K. Rowling's own admission, the person who piqued her was Magdalene Burns. And Magdalene Burns was a socialist who came from a long line or at least some line. Her parents were socialist organizers. She was an activist for the Socialist Labour Party. So it shows you how, while yes, there are a growing number of kind of middle class, J.K. Rowling esque libs and Blairites who are becoming gender critical, the ideological core of this movement is a leftist, kind of Marxist aligned one. And of course, yeah, like when you think about like the radical feminists as well, I'm kind of using kind of socialist Marxist these terms a little bit broadly, but like yeah, radical feminism and kind of Marxist feminists have always been pretty buddy buddy. This is not a liberal movement at its core, but yes, it does kind of appeal to liberals and indeed conservatives and indeed many other people for a variety of reasons. But I guess foremost among them is that it's obviously true.
I would have been fine with him being gay, but destroying his big, strong body with female hormones disgusts.
Actually, sorry, I just want to say something. This is not going in the edit, but something really funny happened, which is somebody said, basically, so it was like a thing where, like, so every now and then, Labour losing women trends in the UK. So Labour's are the. I'm just trying to think if I can conjure up the air quotes sufficient to communicate this. Left wing, there we go, I hit the microphone a bit for extra effect, political party in the UK. And they were like, so, you know, like obviously, like I say, so obviously the thing is, they're trans affirming. And therefore, every now and then, Labour losing women will tweet because, of course, trend, because obviously Turf Island, people will be like, hey, you know, I don't want to associate with Labour because they are trans affirming, because they're going against women's rights, all that kind of stuff. And somebody tweeted like basically saying, well, if you would leave Labour just because they don't hate trans people, then you were never left wing in the first place. And I was speaking to the person, and I kind of like I said several points. One of which being that there are many further left political parties that aren't trans affirming, are critical of trans identity. The Communist Party of Great Britain, the Workers' Party of Great Britain, and the Social Democratic Party are all critical of trans identity and are all left wing. So indeed, in my case, you know, like, and I think a lot of people could do this if they were aware of this as an option. You can literally, you don't have to not support any party or move to the center or the right. I mean, especially as the center, I mean, that's the Lib Dems and they're far worse. But yeah, you can just actually support, and you can go even more left wing and actually be supporting a party that supports women's rights. But the thing is, I also said, oh, also, like, if you're an actual left wing person, Labour's crap. And I gave the example of how they basically intentionally sabotaged Jeremy Corbyn's campaign in 2017 because he was too left wing, and they didn't like the fact he was left wing, so they actively sabotaged him. And the funny thing is that I then got the only comment from kind of anybody else came in, and they were a trans person, and they said, no, Jeremy Corbyn's evil. Jeremy Corbyn was the worst person ever. So I found it funny that basically in this Twitter thread started by this person basically trying to argue that gender critical people aren't authentically left wing, it descended into me, the gender critical person, defending the only actual left wing leader of a British political party in my lifetime against a TRA who was just being a peak lib. So it's just interesting. You know, it's just like an interesting example of how, yeah, maybe it turns out they aren't so so consistently leftist, these trans people.
Disgusts me.
Oh my god, wow. You would have been fine with him being gay? Hashtag ally, hashtag love wins. Big, strong, creepy, but the most important word in this entire post is right here.
I don't see. Here's the thing, like that's just really dumb. Because like, look, if someone says something is fine, then that can mean anything from, you know, they'll tolerate it to they're very enthusiastic about it. Like I would say, like if somebody says I would be fine with my kid being gay, it's kind of it's very uncharitable to interpret that as they don't like it but they'll tolerate it.
Can you guess it? Disgust. There she is, that feeling in her gut. It's not motherly wisdom, it's uncontrollable disgust. Disgust so
Women and being controlled by their emotions.
strong that she can see her child overcome their barriers, succeed and thrive, and go to medical school. And she can look straight at that and she sees her life falling apart. How would it feel to be that kid who has tried so hard and come so far, and this is what you're met with? This is what you get.
This is what you get for believing nonsense. You know, have fun.
Disgust, disappointment, fear.
I can't imagine how I'll be able to work as hard as I need to paying for his college now that I know this.
You know what?
Oh my god, yeah, like, don't pay for your kid's college. Like, don't pay for this, like, narcissistic abuser's college. Please, please, Mum. Please, Dorothy, don't.
I gave you some credit. At least you're saying you're still going to pay for the school, even though your kid is looking to go on hormones and you think it's disgusting. I guess that's the one thing in the situation that could really show that you have some empathy for them. I mean, you are saying your drive to support your child is diminished because you find them disgusting now that they've come out to you, but some credit, I guess, is due. There's a shred of humanity in that choice.
I wish I could just snap my fingers and feel good about affirming his gender choice. Non-binary with feminization.
I kind of find it funny how I, like, do these breakdowns to actual, like, TRAs who are out there giving the best arguments they can for their position and, like, making 5.5-hour series that are supposed to be showing how the gender critical movement is a cult. And meanwhile, this person's doing the exact same thing. They're doing it. They're doing a line by line breakdown to something. And is it a response to something a gender critical person, like an actual kind of gender critical personality, has put out there to argue their case? Nope. Is it a response to one of my videos where I've actually countered many of Caelan Conrad's points? Nope. It's a response to some random mum on Facebook.
Somebody call me. Sorry, what was that?
Non-binary with feminization.
No, I just heard it again. Somebody said my name.
It just doesn't feel right. But the more I talk to him about it, the more I realise how committed he is to it. And that I simply got to the party late.
Did you not notice that not once in that entire breathless rant did you, for a second, even mention how your
I like how, I mean, like, it's not even consistent with how it was presented here that it was a rant.
child is doing with all this? How they are feeling about their transition? Of course you didn't. Why would you?
Why are you saying that, like, there was no consideration about how they're feeling? You're just kind of inserting that from nowhere. And again, it feels like really kind of, it's just so messed up that, like, somebody is venting about their feelings and your immediate response is jumping to go, yeah, but did you think about how other people are thinking? It's like that's just so weird to me. Like, if someone's talking about their feelings, let them talk about their feelings. Like, I would be genuinely really scared if this was how somebody reacted to, like, let's say their intimate partner talking about, like, something that bothered them. Like, their intimate partner's talking about something that bothers them, and they say, yeah, but did you think about how anyone else feels in this? It's like, for goodness sake, let people just talk about how they're feeling. Like, you're such a hypocrite because you're the one, like, being dismissive of, like, here's the thing. If a trans-identified person came out and said all of this stuff about their mum, you wouldn't be there saying, but did you think about how they're feeling? Did you think about how your mum's feeling? You wouldn't say that. So you're literally just being a hypocrite here. Like, if you're attacking the mum for apparently not paying sufficient consideration to how the child is thinking, but you're not attacking the child for, I would imagine, perhaps complaining to all the groomer buddies on Discord about how, you know, the mum isn't affirming them, and I bet they're not considering how the mum feels.
I remember in my innocent early days as Carol Marinera reading this post and thinking, holy crap, they're going to eat this batshit mom up in the comments.
Why do you think that? Why would they? It's Why? What are you on about? I don't get it. The only time that you showed somebody in one of these Facebook groups being critical of one of the parents is when that parent was homophobic. And by the way, now I'm remembering, the parent in question was you pretending to be a homophobic, gender critical parent because I guess you couldn't find any actual examples. And yeah, apparently then you came across an example of a parent who, let me remind everyone, has already said she would have been fine with her son being gay, so she wasn't homophobic. The only thing she's critical of is the trans identity, which of course, why would anybody have a problem? Why would anybody in a gender critical group eat somebody up for being against trans identity?
Comments. Like, even for concerned parents, seeing your child transitioning disgust you is pretty fucked up.
Which are what? What? What are you on about? You've literally one of the central theses of this video has been that the gender critical movement is motivated by disgust. So why how does that make any sense? Surely if your entire argument, or like one of your central arguments in this video, is true, then they would have been like, oh yeah, that's yeah, of course we're all disgusted. Like, I don't understand it. How can you simultaneously have made an entire video like, oh yeah, the gender critical movement is full of disgust, and then be like, oh, but they would have been against this woman because she was disgusted? I don't understand the logic there.
Like, especially if they're an adult. But no, nor.
Cut off financially support for your son. Set boundaries and place huge consequences on your daughter for being disrespectful. You have power over how you are treated.
Mine is only 16, so I have control over medical staff.
Well,
But it is getting to the point where I'm losing control over name and pronouns. I'm starting to realize I will need to accept it and detach myself from him, or it will kill me. And I don't at all feel compelled to pay for college at all. If you're ready to change your gender, you're ready to deal with it all.
And we are ableist, transphobic goons if we suggest that autism means that they are less mature for their age, making the request for permanent body changes something that should be given scrutiny.
It's your son that has ASD? This is very disproportionately affects ASD kids. It's the black and white thinking. I would recommend engaging whatever support he has for that, not for gender, in the past. DBT, etc., and cut off any access he can get to prescriptions. Your daughter may be moved by engaging her help against the exploitation by the pharmaceutical industry of vulnerable kids. Finally, doesn't sound likely, but can you get guardianship?
Guardianship would be impossible. He's much too high functioning and presents as neurotypical.
Mine as well. It's a double-edged sword, so this is harder. My 28-year-old ASD girl was supportive of my 14-year-old non-binary. I give her something else to obsess about, the exploitation and damage. That appealed to her and it worked. Now she is as outraged as she was supportive. Neither are hugely well-researched positions, but at least she's on my side now.
I happened to notice that he requested gender-inclusive housing on his housing form and a trans woman roommate. Otherwise, the same thing would have happened with him. I'm going to demand he sign a stack of HIPAA forms before he goes to college.
I hope that he complies with your demands. Since my son went on full scholarship, I have no leverage. I certainly don't want to give him ultimatums. He will choose to spite me no matter what the long-term consequences might be. Do you have a relationship with a therapist? Are you sure they won't affirm his gender delusions?
I haven't let anyone speak directly to him yet, but I have spoken to a few therapists, and the first thing I do is make sure they are not affirming. He's going to be checking in with a therapist every week, and I'll have a HIPAA to speak to that therapist, and we are going up for homecoming in October. He's extremely talented and brilliant and very stable right now despite this gender issue. And if I take his college plans away, he'll just sit in his room and never do anything, so I gotta risk it.
Heartfelt condolences. After a lifetime of us protecting those bodies, they themselves are wanting to mutilate them. If you want to feed him information about male transgender regret, I have got some leads, but they're not easy to read for moms. Also, I encourage you to think through the plan to pay for his college. Why would you? If he's disrespectful or intolerant, especially. But even if he's not, if he's going to damage his health and employability and be unlikely to be able to pursue any career he is allegedly training for, I would suggest it is not an irrational trade-off that if he does any physical damage to himself, that he will be responsible for his own expenses. Our son is probably now unemployed.
Good advice from the parents. One account I only follow dogs and they blocked me on there. That's funny. Oh wait, hold on a minute. What's this? Oh, so that's what Shinigami is. I just thought it was some weird Death Note reference. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I've never seen I mean, it's a pretty obvious point, but yeah, I've never seen a gender critical person mass blocking TRAs.
Employable in his major, hasn't finished college, and we're stuck with the bills. Who is actually going to hire him or take him seriously when he looks mentally ill now? Finally, let's talk lawsuits. I'm not a lawyer, but many parents who have posted here should be seeing a lawyer to assess their cases or indeed reporting things to police as child luring. I'm not being excessive here.
Even Dorothy was like, I'm a lawyer, that's not how that works. I'm sure she would have sued them if she could.
You could do what another family I know did. They told their child no cross-sex hormones until college is finished. So, it's one or the other. Do college first. After that, you're free to do as you wish. As my friend says, every day not on hormones is a win.
And finally, Dorothy's decision was made.
I'm not paying the balance of this semester's tuition until he's signed a stack of HIPAA forms allowing me to speak to the health clinic at his school or any other doctor he sees with the school insurance I am paying for. I was scared for a while hearing about how kids kill themselves when denied transition, but my son doesn't seem to be in any distress, and I think his smarts have a little hole in them due to his autism that this nonsense seeps into. I can't express how much you have helped me here in this group. Putting together elements from suggestions here, I have decided that I will be telling my pre-med student son that I will not be subsidizing his use of hormones, even if they are covered by the insurance, because I am also paying for the insurance.
Isn't it surprising that TRAs would use something that's an extension that's a reference to anime? Shocking. That's what I always found unrealistic about Death Note, right? Like, there are way too many sociopaths in the world. You would think, like, if people were actually getting Death Notes with, like, some frequency, which seems to be implied within the Death Note universe, you would get people, like, just killing people for nothing. Like, imagine if a TRA got a Death Note. Like, J.K. Rowling would be dead. Like, literally, I'm pretty sure I'd be dead. Maybe that's a good reason to totally scrub my surname. I knew you would bring that up, Lisa. Okay. Yeah, to be fair, I have realized that like in the last few recordings, this could be a little bit lower. You know what? I mean, I suppose I could turn it down real quick now. Like, I don't want to turn it down too much though, because it's more annoying to bring the volume up than it is in the editor. Sorry, I mean I'm bringing the audio of the video down a bit, just to make it a bit more similar.
If he wants to take hormones, he can wait until he gets his medical license and write the prescription himself in 10 years or so. I highly doubt he'll still be interested. In the meantime, now that I understand what gender dysphoria is, and it is real, I am trying to show him that lots of people are grossed out by different things, and it's not a big deal. I told him how much I don't like back hair and how most men that
This is a good attitude. Yeah, like teach your kid that actually being uncomfortable with some aspects of your body is it is a problem, but it's something that is normal. It's something that other people deal with. And the healthy reaction is not to decide that you need to rewrite your entire conception of reality and start believing in nonsense claims just to help you with your mental health issues about your perception of your own body.
Have it shave it off, and how some women don't like chest hair and ask men to shave it off. We went on Zoom together to choose his classes for the upcoming semester, and I am crossing my fingers that he's gotten the message that no medical transitioning of genders is acceptable. I haven't told him yet that he can simply forget it until he can pay the cost of it on its own, but I'm pretty confident he's not going to choose the trans cult over becoming a doctor, studying abroad in Italy, and we talked about that this evening, studying wildlife in Costa Rica, etc.
Just pipe it.
To be fair, I do think this, like, the thing is, I wonder to what extent this is like a temporary solution. Sorry, I'm just gonna. Because, like, he's still gonna have all the same kind of messed up ideas, you know? So I don't know. I'm not sure if it's really gonna work out like long term. But she seems really nice, and it seems like it should work. But like I don't know, she's talking about like sending him abroad to Italy. I'm not sure. Yeah. I could just imagine him like when he's away being like, you know, like still getting back into it. Yes, you're right. I do give off sexy androgynous energy.
Been in here. Hey, just want to point out that offering opportunities to your child and then rescinding them because of their gender or sexuality is the definition of discrimination. I know you guys like the basics, so
Hold a minute, like it's one of those weird examples of where like discrimination is kind of meaningless because it's like like when you're talking about like a parent, like discrimination is kind of like usually talked about in like an institutional context, right? Like I don't know, it just seems a bit weird to like say that from like the perspective of a parent, because like parents are supposed to be discriminating, right? Because like they're because it's like their kid. By definition, they're not treating people equally. They're like because it's like it's their kid. You know, like I always just find it weird. Like my classic example is if like you kill people indiscriminately, that's not a good thing. You gotta be discriminating sometimes. Like sometimes being discriminating is good because it's like discriminating between, of course, truth and falsehood.
you're pushing your child out for not complying and submitting to your demands. You are threatening to derail their entire lives, take away all the dreams they had for their future that you gave them if they live their life in ways you think are wrong for them, for expressing their gender in ways you find disgusting. What would you call a father who wouldn't let his son go to university if he had gay sex while he was there? And if he found out, he'd pull his fund.
I mean, I'd call him an arsehole. There we go. Can I say that? Am I allowed to say that? I would call that father an arsehole. I mean, but then having said that, there's like other things. Like, for example, I wouldn't be like against a father saying you shouldn't have sex in general, like being against premarital sex, because that's like a legitimate choice for somebody to make. Like you can say, I don't think that you should have premarital sex. But like if you're just discriminating against it because it's gay, well, that's not okay. Right. Or like drinking, for example. So I don't know, like the whole thing is a bit weird because like there are some things which like a parent could say, no, you know, like I am your parent and I think there's certain things which are appropriate and certain things which aren't.
And that requested access to all the doctor's information to make sure he wasn't going on PrEP or getting condoms. Or a mother that checks in with her child's doctors at college to make sure she's not on birth control or antidepressants. Parents who threaten to stop paying for university if their child gets vaccinated. You can go ahead. You could probably do all that. You have that power. But let's make one thing perfectly clear. Just because you have the right to do something doesn't mean doing it is right. Doesn't mean doing it doesn't make you a petty, immature, ugly person. Doesn't mean they will ever forgive you for as long as they live. I can't even begin to describe to you how heartbreakingly cruel this phrase is. Every day not on hormones is a win. Every day not on hormones is a win. Every one of those days is another day that your child reaches out in pain and you slap their fucking hand away.
My son is not in the least bit androgynous, and I still don't know what on earth he would even hope to achieve with the hormones.
Yeah, I'm sure you can't imagine what they hope to achieve. That they've always presented masculine to you. Do you know why? Here's a possibility. Maybe it's your fault. Specifically your fault. Maybe your visceral disgust in the femininity of men is exactly why it feels like it's coming out of the blue, with a rapid onset, if you will. Because they didn't feel safe telling you.
When did they say that they were disgusted by the femininity of men? They said they were disgusted with the idea of somebody getting inalterable surgery to their body. They didn't say the idea of a man being feminine is disgusting to them. You know, I'm pretty sure if you like, I bet this mom was into some David Bowie back in her day. I reckon so. He's pretty feminine presenting. Like, I don't believe that this mom is like just against. And again, if she was, then she would be gender critical, because of course a gender critical person, unless obviously, yeah, unless you're talking about like kind of so much imitating femininity that it becomes a bit like kind of cultural appropriation, where you say, is it appropriate for somebody who is kind of a beneficiary of patriarchal oppression, a man, to be imitating somebody who is a victim of patriarchal oppression, a woman? You could have that argument, but in terms of just like more just like aesthetic choices when it comes to femininity, I don't think most people have a problem with that at all, and certainly no gender critical people. Oh yeah, someone's pointing out, she said she doesn't like back hair. She doesn't like back hair on men. Body hair is matches. So yeah, this woman obviously already supports something that's kind of feminine. Like if a guy is shaving his back hair, that's a pretty feminine thing to do. Yeah, I'm seeing. Oh, yeah, I also am seeing people point out the kind of the entitlement of like getting your university paid for in full by your parents is already a pretty substantial privilege. So yeah, and yeah, people are pointing out this person is just unambiguously a mom hater, and I definitely agree with that.
Because of your shitty fucking attitude. In my day, we didn't have any of this gender nonsense. Oh, cool. The past was different. Are you gonna live in it, or are you gonna join us in the here and now?
This is like, this person just got so like, Caelan got so triggered by this one comment. It's like, I really don't care, dude.
Just wondering. I'm making a seating chart. The claim that the trans persona in the child is actually an invention implanted through deviance on Roblox and Discord runs rampant through these groups. They claim that because they didn't know their child was trans, that this is evidence in itself that they aren't trans. It's so ridiculous to me because gender and sexual minorities, all of a sudden telling people we're queer or trans or gay or whatever is not new. It's called coming out. You don't get to blame us for masking ourselves to hide from your vitriol and invalidation and then use your memories of that mask as evidence that it's our real face. No.
I mean, look, let's be clear. The reason why trans identity is nonsense is not because you can conclude somebody's trans identity is inauthentic because they didn't previously seem to act in a way that made you think they would identify as trans. The reason it's nonsense is because it's nonsense. The reason it's inauthentic is because nobody is authentically trans. Nobody is authentically a biological male who's a woman. It's like, even if there is precedent, so what? It's like, oh, you know, well, there was precedent. Like, if there was precedent that your kid was going to believe the Earth is flat, that doesn't mean the Earth is flat. It's that simple.
I know my son isn't gay because he was all girls. He was always talking about girls he was in love with, like Sarah Paulson and Lana Del Rey and Beyonce. He was girl crazy, if anything.
I know my son isn't trans because he was always so masculine. Made a big show of it. My big, gorgeous son and his big, strong body.
Like, yes, Denise, and that didn't seem sus? Literally, they'll be like, look at the smile in this photo. I hold it up in her face, even though she hates it and she can't look at it because she knows the truth. She was happy.
That's a pretty alpha move. Let's look at that face. I like that, like confronting someone with their happiness. I grew up gay in a strict Christian house. I cannot see my parents responding positively to this. I'm not sure what the exact context is.
Good mom. No, your kid can't look at it because being a trans kid and having your parents try and gaslight you out of your own memory of events is incredibly fucked up.
I like how you're getting the gaslight thing here, but I would say, like, you're not gaslighting somebody by saying, look, you literally were noticeably happy and, like, looking like you were content with your life. That's not gaslighting, that's pointing out the obvious reality. It's, if anything, more gaslighting to say, no, actually, even while I was giving fully the impression of being happy and content, I was miserable the whole time, and you now need to accept a completely different narrative of how I was. That's gaslighting. Like, I don't understand. It's literally, like, why does Caelan always say the opposite to what's actually true?
They don't see their children as...
Who is this being aimed at? Well, let me tell you, this is being aimed at some random Facebook person who we've been, I think, in the process of hearing Caelan epic style debunk for the past half an hour, it feels like. Genuinely, just...
as people with their own memories and interpretations and valid feelings. Everything they say about their children is an invalidation of who they are. Claiming your child's memories are false is not only brainwashing and gaslighting, claiming they're false because you remember the situation differently is to narcissistically assume your experience of things is universal. It's placing your interpretation of their experiences above their own. It's a key tactic to stripping gender and sexual minority youth of their agency, which is why I'm like honing in on this specific thing. Like with adults, we understand that two people having the same conversation can be experiencing something completely different internally. Let's do a couple thought experiments here because I really need to hammer this point home. Specifically, let's work with an example that addresses the smiling photos as evidence that you were happy as a young, not trans kid. You're on your way to sit down at your sister's wedding. The wedding march is playing and she'll be out any second. Right as you sit down, you see your husband kissing the best man in the rectory. You're about to go over there and freak the fuck out when you hear the bride shuffling down the aisle. You run to your seat. You go through the motions, spending the rest of the night in a daze, avoiding your husband, smiling for photos, trying not to scream because everyone seems to be having a great time, but your entire world feels like it's falling apart. A few years later, after your divorce, you happen to mention to your mom in passing that your sister's wedding was the worst night of your life. She says, no, was it? You're like, yes, it was. I was there. So she's like, no, you had a great time. You're like, no, I didn't actually. I think I would know. Like, can we not talk about this? She's like, I have photos. You're smiling in them, and I know my kid.
This is so weird. Like, I don't know. I literally have no idea what any of this is supposed to be achieving. Oh, it's so weird. I don't know.
Kids, you were happy. It was a great day. Don't put your stuff on your sister's wedding day. These parents are holding up that pain and shoving it in your face as proof that you weren't in pain. And the thing is, you don't even need to be an adult to remember that something was painful or unpleasant or difficult for you. In fact, those are some of the first things you learn to remember as a kid. Like hot stove. And to apply that because they're children, they cannot feel pain the way their parents do, nor have independent personal memories that differ from their parents is textbook dehumanization. And all they have to validate their belief that their child is lying about their own memories and who they are is their gut. That's not proof of anything. Take some fucking Tums and go lie down, grandma. They even use that trans people have experiences in common with each other to prove their child isn't really trans. If their child says they've always felt different, they'll say, it's like you're quoting transcripts. All trans people say that. This is on the level of saying if multiple women come out with similar stories of being sexually assaulted, they must be lying. They sound like they're quoting each other. Their entire movement's centered around people with different experiences but common reactions to them. Their example of a script is, I've always felt different, or I was never happy with my gender. As if those aren't just like common shared experiences for gender and sexual minorities. Are the people in the Me Too movement lying because they often say the same thing, that for years they were too scared to tell the truth about what happened to them? Should we use red carpet photos of an actress smiling beside her abuser as evidence that she was like actually into it? Like, this is where this ideology leads. If you just sit in it and think for more than a second, how is it possible?
Okay, I suppose I should respond to the whole like, well, what if something actually bad has happened and you're smiling to conceal the fact that something bad has happened? Here's the thing, okay? In that situation, you can very clearly explain why it is that there was a confusion. Like, you can say, no, actually, I was smiling because I was in the presence of somebody who was harming me, and I didn't want to make it obvious because I was afraid to let people know. The problem is, trans identity doesn't make any sense. Trans identity is literally just about wishy-washy feelings. It's just about, oh, I felt uncomfortable because I didn't feel like I was being my true self, which is a meaningless thing to say. And that's why it's gaslighting. To say, oh, I wasn't happy that whole time because I wasn't being my true self. It's like, no, you were, because the only thing you can be is your true self. Like, if you're being yourself, like if you are existing right now on this planet, you are being your true self. Now, you could say, oh, you know, I don't know, like you're in a disguise or something like that. But in this case, you obviously weren't. Like, who you are is a biological male or biological female. There aren't such things as gendered souls. So it's not as if there was something inside you that was being trapped or suppressed or anything like that. That's kind of the issue. And I want to stress, like, I'm not saying, oh, if somebody is, you know, if some, sorry, I read the comment, which I found funny. And I'm not saying like, oh, if somebody smiles in a photo, that means they were definitely happy, and they're definitely wrong to say they weren't. What I'm saying is, it's quite a reasonable objection, especially to somebody who's just offering a nebulous kind of comment about, oh, I just wasn't happy because I wasn't being my true self, to point to the record of them consistently behaving happy and seeming to be content, and arguing, hold on a minute, 1 minute you go from seeming happy all the time to next thing you're telling me I need to believe something totally nonsense or else you're going to end your own life. That's a pretty reasonable response, and it's kind of gaslighting for the person to say, who's literally telling you, you've got to believe the nonsense I'm telling you or else I'm going to kill myself. Oh, I've always been like this whole time. This is just me finally being who I've been all along. That's far more like gaslighting. But yeah, like I say, what do I know? Apparently mums are evil.
Possibly ever okay?
Sorry, and that's the other thing. Yeah, like someone's saying, it's like, it's not like photos are the only thing here. Like, the photos are being put forward as a piece of concrete evidence. But the point is, it's like, no, look, I was with you this entire time, and you were consistently acting happy. There's no like, and I mean, apart from anything else, it's a reasonable question to ask, simply to try and understand, right? Like, even if you're not presenting it as like you're wrong, you're just presenting, well, how do you explain this? You're saying, oh, you've literally been something else this whole time, and it's been like painful for you to disguise it and stuff like that. And it's like, really? Because it seems like you were fine, and now almost as if there's some kind of confirmation bias going on, where you've actually been fed into the, you've seen this idea and you've bought into it, and it's kind of just snowballed into this thing that's become an increasing obsession for you. Bearing in mind, if we're talking about kids, there's a chance, like we're talking about trans kids, there's a chance this is already a kid who has potentially some kind of like mild mental health issues apart from that anyway, like a lot of, obviously autism is a classic example. But yeah, it seems like this has become a point of obsession for you, and now suddenly out of nowhere you're telling me that you're about to end your own life. How do you explain that? How do you explain why my narrative of you were fine, suddenly you bought into a nonsense idea, became obsessed with it, and have now been fed a script that's telling you, because of course we know that talking about trans suicide increases instances of suicidal ideation. That talking about suicide in general and kind of constantly, like basically telling people that they're likely to commit suicide will make people more likely to commit suicide. This is an observed phenomenon. So with that said, that would seem to be a much more obvious narrative for why you're now telling me you're going to kill yourself unless I start agreeing with everything you say, than your narrative of actually you've just been perfectly hiding this thing the whole time and you've known it all along. Yeah.
You to tell someone they really liked it, and the only reason they think otherwise is mental illness. All those claims All that bullshit, all based on your fucking gut.
More like gucking fart.
Trust your gut.
Taking your child to the doctor is one of the most dangerous things you can do.
Trust your gut.
Your kid won't actually kill himself.
Yeah, someone's already pointed this out. Like, this was like a while ago. Like, I think it was back in part 2. But there was this whole trust your gut thing, even though I've never known any gender critical person who has said trust your gut before. Like, I literally, like, this is not a phrase in the movement. Like, I've never said trust your gut. I don't know if anyone else has ever said trust your gut. But yeah, they're really leaning into it, which is fun.
I would assume.
And even if they do, it's not on you.
Trust your gut.
You know your kid better than they do.
Trust your gut.
Don't
Okay, this is going to sound crazy, but you wrote increase in tics. I actually don't know what tics, T-I-C-S, actually stands for.
give in no
Like, it feels like a term I should know what it means.
matter how much they fight you.
Trust your gut.
Gut.
Remember, we're all here for you.
Trust your gut. Because we all did.
Trust your gut, even if
so
you
good.
lose your kid.
Because we
I
all
love this.
I wonder sometimes if I could. My children say I abuse them. They're liars.
It's been a year, and it doesn't hurt as
I
bad.
know so many who have lost their kids.
This is really entertaining.
And the truth about this group is, many of the people in it, including the moderators, are completely estranged from their children because of what they did to them. Their children are free from them and now thriving. How those people feel qualified to run a group for parents is beyond me. It's unfortunate that the people that are allowed to speak on how trans children should be treated are people like fucking
I'm not even going to really touch on the whole, like you have to have a qualification to run a Facebook group.
Lynn. Lynn is a gender critical activist who works with the anti-trans organization GenSpect and has been given the platform to share her story all across the internet. Right-wing and gender critical blogs eager to lap up her story of the trans cult taking away her 2 children from her. Only when she posted these sob stories on Twitter, her children finally spoke up for themselves. I wasn't sure if it was actually her kids, but Maria Keffler actually confirmed it in a blog. They explained that they were not suckered in by a cult. Some of the reasons they claim they actually left were Lynn is a racist, is a Proud Boy, physically abused and assaulted them throughout their lives, used the children's survivor benefits from the government to buy herself luxuries, and the most direct reason they claim they actually left was that she made them. That she kicked her children out. I don't know if that's true. Personally, I try and believe survivors. And while Lynn seems to be the most public-facing parent in these groups, she's far from the only one who has driven her children away. They soothe themselves with tales of salvation. Gender-critical people, especially the parents, like to share a prophecy amongst themselves of the great detransition, when the children all return home and tell their parents they were right all along. It's coming, they say, like Trump's eventual return to office, all the vaccinated suckers dying, the return of Jesus himself, when the righteous shall be lifted into heaven. Everyone who hangs out on the fringe of reason and science thinks they are going to be proven to be right eventually. That all of this won't have been for nothing, and that'll show us, everyone who doubts.
I mean, look, okay, here's the thing. So I remember seeing like somebody else mention this, of like the whole thing of like, well, gender critical people are a cult because they believe in the idea that like eventually things like kind of the second coming narrative of like eventually something will happen which will prove that we're all right. You know, I mean, it reminds me of when like I saw a Muslim one time be like, I can't wait until Jesus shows up and says Islam is true, which, you know, good luck with that. But like the thing is, obviously, it's again another example of where you can't just like the difference between a cult and any other belief oriented movement is going to be about a matter of degrees, right? Like, because lots of different movements are going to try to recruit people. So if you want to say what makes that movement a cult, you can't just say it's that they try to recruit people. You need to show what it is about how they're trying to recruit people that's cult-like. so on and so forth. If you're going to say that a movement reinforces each other's beliefs, well, every single movement reinforces each other's beliefs. So you're going to have to show that they're reinforcing each other in a uniquely cult-like way. And in the exact same sense, a lot of movements do believe, that actually they are going to be successful, that they will be vindicated by the kind of, what is it, like the long arc of history or whatever Obama talked about. Like the whole phrase, like the right side of history, is a very common phrase, and it's a phrase not just reserved for cults. And the thing is, like conversely, I mean, we have the term black pill to describe people who actually believe that it's hopeless, that their movement isn't going to succeed. And that's actually considered quite a kind of niche part of a movement. Like if you are black pilled, that's actually considered quite rare, because the alternative is actually just to be kind of normal, just to believe that, yeah, of course, what you believe will ultimately be successful. So the point is, it's not enough. I mean, it's a really simple point, but it's not enough to just show that gender critical people believe they will be vindicated by history or by the future, that eventually the future will result in a situation where people recognize that trans identity is nonsense and that gender critical people are viewed as having been on the right side of history. It's not enough to claim that because they believe that, they're therefore similar to, whatever kind of doomsday cult or anything like that. Because why would you say that rather than saying they're similar to the innumerable socialists and, kind of communists, funny face to pause on, by the way, who, who believe, of course, as Marx literally said, that eventually communism is going to be like the final kind of completely like the kind of final economic model. I mean, I know Caelan Conrad's only a pretend communist and pretend socialist and is actually deep down a liberal shill, but if you're going to pretend to be a socialist or communist, you might think that you would have to at least consider the fact that socialism and communism, like literally in one of Caelan Conrad's previous videos, there was a picture of Marx in a framed picture in the background. And it's like, do you not realize that Marx literally taught that there is a progression of different economic systems which will ultimately end in communism? So is communism a cult? Or is it just like a lot of movements saying, hey, you know what? Eventually we'll be right. Because that's what a lot of movements do. You know what? I'm going to bet back in like the 18th century, the kind of slavery abolitionists believed that they would be proven correct and that eventually slavery would be abolished. And you know what? They were right. They weren't crazy cult members. They were people who were championing a righteous cause and were correct and were proven correct by history, as indeed has happened at many times throughout history. I'm sure I could find, I mean, what about MLK, right? He says he has a dream of like one day when people won't be judged by the color of their skin. Or a crazy cult leader, MLK, believing in the doomsday prophetic time when suddenly he'll be proven right. Like that's the thing, it's just very stupid. Almost every single person on at least some of their beliefs believes that they will be proven correct, and that doesn't make it a cult. I mean, it doesn't even like even for religious beliefs. Not all religions are cults, so it's kind of like even then it's dumb.
Noted them. That'll show all of us, won't it? I don't believe that's going to happen. But after all of this time with these
hold on. Hold on a minute. So you don't believe that's going to happen? So are you saying that you believe that actually your movement will be proven correct by history? That your movement will be vindicated? That your movement will be the one that is looked back on as the correct one? So I guess you must be a part of a cult then. Because that's the logic you were presenting. Like that's the issue, see? Everybody believes that they will ultimately be proven to be correct.
People, I do have to wonder how much harm is done not by the parents, but by the people who instruct parents with no training to perform at-home therapies on their children, who sold them manuals with tactics which have been shown to both increase suicidal ideation and ended suicide. I wonder how culpability will be met out when it's all said and done, when this blatantly fringe
Okay, this is interesting. The claim is, how will culpability... Because I actually spoke about this before. I mean, I literally... Again, I used my favorite phrase, the Nuremberg trials of public opinion. Like, when it's revealed that trans identity is not... Because here's the thing, you'll notice we're basically saying the same thing. Interestingly, I think Caelan Conrad would accuse me of being cult-like for basically just saying the exact same thing Caelan's saying, but in reverse. Because I agree with Caelan that I think that yes, actually, there will be a moment where the people who disagree with me will be held to account. They will be held culpable. They will be viewed negatively, and they will be, like in some sense, punished for the actions they've done. So I am saying all the exact same things Caelan is saying. I think that Judith Butler will go down as a monster, just as like, I mean, the funny thing is, this has literally already happened. I mean, the person who coined the phrase gender identity was John Money, and already, admittedly, it took until like even in the 1990s, John Money was still being praised as a wonderful, fantastic person. But nowadays, even the TRAs are rejecting John Money, saying they don't want anything to do with John Money. So the funny thing is, I mean, I'll say this: even if, like John Money, it ends up that these people are rejected by the TRAs of the future, I think these people will still be rejected. Like maybe in the future it will be like, oh yeah, we knew that puberty blockers were bad, but that's not really what the trans movement is about. Just like apparently the trans movement wasn't about John Money, even though he started it. Like that's kind of the thing. These people might move the goalposts, but I think no matter what, the people right now pushing out the worst of this stuff will be. And yeah, someone's mentioning Tavistock, which is of course an interesting, relevant thing here. Like Tavistock has got in trouble for their abuse of children. It's so fascinating, isn't it? It's so interesting that actually we're both saying the same thing. Caelan Conrad saying, well, how will the gender critical people be held to account when all of the evil they've done is revealed? And I'm basically saying the same thing. The interesting thing is I actually have a precedent for saying that, because there have been TRAs who have been held to account, like John Money. I mean, not, again, literally just in kind of the, like I say, trial or the court of public opinion. But, obviously now it's happening with Tavistock. It's happening with Stonewall, right? Like, thanks to the Alison Bailey ruling, you're not going to get organizations wanting to sign up to Stonewall's diversity scheme anymore, because Stonewall will get off scot-free, and meanwhile they'll be faced having to, foot the bill. Like they're going to get an annoying kind of legal battle where it will be found that they were discriminatory. That's not good. So yeah, we have more of a basis to make these claims. So I just want to look at some of the comments real quick. Yeah. Okay.
Bias-fueled reaction to wider trans inclusion is named for exactly what it is: hatred and propaganda. When the children of these parents, now grown, have a chance to tell their stories about what their parents did to them after reading Maria Keffler and Abigail Schreier's books. I wonder, will their stories sound like Lynn's kids? Love to burst your bubble, but there will be no grand day of reckoning in your favor, no final evidence that gender-critical ideology was right all along. All there is and will be is what there is now. Moments so small as to seem insignificant against the sheer scope of this fight, but that are so large in magnitude that they can break your kid's heart forever. The moments where your child, isolated from school, family, friends, looks at you and sees disgust in your face and is afraid. The moment they come to you for comfort, but instead learn that they are utterly alone in this world. Moments where they plot in their head how they're going to run away and leave, only to realize they have no way out. No doctors to tell, no teachers to confide in, cut off from their extended family, siblings, nobody to seek safety in but the woman whose lips curl in disgust when you tell her who you are. There's not going to be a victory for you. That's not how this works. At the end of this road you're on, one way or another, if your child is trans, you are going to lose them. Maybe even if they aren't. They will find a way to get away from you eventually, regardless of the price they pay. You will never understand the consuming agony of that isolation. You will never recognize the absolute devastation you brought down on your child. And when they get away from you, when they leave one day and never speak to you again, that's going to be entirely, without question, your fucking fault. Well, you, maybe the people who sold you these lies, What will you think of them once you realize what you've done to your child? Once you realize what you've lost? You know, if I were an anti-trans icon, I wouldn't be scared of the gender industry. I'd be scared of the people I led to believe I was qualified enough to tell them how to treat their child's gender dysphoria.
I mean, first of all, I don't think I've said very much about how to treat your kid's gender dysphoria, apart from just vaguely saying that some of the stuff that's been mentioned here sounds good. Yeah, this is all pretty intense. I will say, you know, would I call myself an anti-trans icon? Well, I don't know. Icon's a pretty strong word. And you know, I think when it comes to challenging trans identity, I prefer to think of myself as an iconoclast. But with that said, I'm obviously somebody with somewhat of a platform, the kind of person who can Google my name and see some people saying some things, the kind of person who will occasionally get mentioned on the ContraPoint subreddit. You know, I'm someone who makes some waves, and I will say that I've never once thought to myself that what I have to worry about is the people I like, you know, who watch my videos saying, oh God, he was lying to me this whole time. He was manipulating me by showing me everything the opposite side was saying and responding to it. Like, you know, I don't know. It would be pretty, I would say honestly, like if I've managed to manipulate anybody by literally showing them everything that these people are saying, then I almost feel like that's so impressive that you should be impressed. Because like usually, you know, if you want to manipulate someone, you want to shut them off from alternative ideas. I've somehow managed to manipulate people principally by just telling them what or showing them what the other side has been saying, which is pretty funny. Yeah, Caelan Conrad's blocked me.
I'd be worried about what they would do when they realized I was selling them an alternative to modern medicine that simply doesn't work, that causes harm. Once they realize that there is a cult, there is a conspiracy, only it's people like Maria Snake Oil Keffler that are the ones helping to groom kids into that cult. When I consider that, I wonder if maybe there will come a day of reckoning after all.
Closing time. Oh, goodness me.
Desist, Detrans, Detox could have been written by anyone. Maria Keffler just happened to be the one to copy and paste it into Amazon self-publishing or whatever first. This is not really about her. This is about the methods outlined in her book, because those methods are the methods these parents follow. Understanding these methods is integral to being able to recognize if a child you know is being groomed into this cult by their parents through conversion therapy. But we also need to recognize these methods because they have directly led trans kids to suicide. And this is something she never presents in her book as something to seriously consider as a possibility. And it shouldn't be one, but it will be as long as they get to operate under the cover of being concerned parents while committing horrific abuses. I know I'll be accused of being hateful and misogynistic and that I'm not a parent, so I can't speak on this issue. Well, guess what? You're not trans and you're doing a whole lot of fucking yapping.
Women yapping. Those damn women. Always yapping, always running their mouth, Caelan?
I don't care at all for the feelings of any parent who subjects their child to that kind of shame and isolation. Don't bother sending your comments to me. I will not read it. I will not be a platform for your victimhood and your vitriol. Save it for Facebook. This ideology is harmful for so many reasons to gender and sexual minorities. But although we are often the targets, there is so much collateral damage along the way. Their war isn't a tidy one, and in their never-ending crusade to demonize and dehumanize trans people, anti-trans activists have trampled on every single marginalized group that gets in their way. And like they're always asking for, I've got the receipts. That's next time, in part 3.
Oh, receipts.
As I mentioned before, there is so much information to convey that even hours of video feels like it's falling short, so you can find way more screenshots here. This is also why I'm going to take the now 90k words I have and edit it down to a more structured book. If you want to donate a little something to cover expenses like editors and self-publishing fees, I've set up this link here. Otherwise, if you want to support me and get behind the scenes content, I've started making a zine while in the research and planning phase of my videos, and those are available exclusively on my Patreon. There's not any like new
90k words, that's not long for a book, right? I'm not crazy, right? I'm pretty sure I've written more than that by accident. I don't know. For context, actually, wait. I think I'll be able to tell you. Do you want to know? So bear in mind, okay, this is the notes for my YouTube videos. This is not the scripts for my YouTube videos. I'm interested in seeing how long it is. I say to myself, failing to actually bring it up. So here is how many words the scripts for my Oh really? So 90k is a lot. All right. Do you want to know how do you want to know how many words the the document, the Word document where I write my notes for my YouTube videos is, how long it is? It is 525,105 words. Let's turn that into a book. And that's just notes. Like, that's literally like things like just, you know, I mean, it's got some videos which I haven't even worked on, like the obvious example being the long put off debunking of the entire transgender studies reader, which I've like been working my way through. But I don't know. It's like one of those things where like, you know, I'm quite concerned about the potential burnout of a video, you know, like a video series that would take a very long time. Yeah, I've seen some. I don't know. I write a lot. I wrote a book which I never even like I actually wrote a book, and it was like, oh goodness me, I might be able to tell you. Screw it. I'd have to like, maybe screw it. No, it's like on an external hard drive, but I'm pretty sure it was over 9. I don't know. Like I just like literally I do have a problem. I've tried to like that's funny. I've tried to like write books before, and they always end up in the 900-page territory. I'm a real George R.R. Martin like that. And that's like A4 pages too. I don't know. I have a problem. Like it's like what I said though. Like I've said before, like I feel like some people might think my videos are longer because I don't script them, but they would be longer if I script them. Like I tend to be more to the point when I'm not writing stuff. I am sad. I don't know how to write. I left school at a young age. My dad left school at a young age. My dad left school when he was 14, and then he got a job. He got an apprenticeship as an engineer. So, have you ever considered getting an apprenticeship as an engineer? All right, let's actually get to the end of this real quick.
content in it. I don't want to put anything behind a paywall. This is just like a fun art project. It's my notes from when I'm working on the video. I'm very poor, help me.
Yeah, would I consider stuffering? I don't even know where stuffering came from there. Covering, oh, I know why, it's because I was reading the word stuff. Consider covering some GC Sports stuff. There are interviews by Smashbox you can cover about trans winner for women's disc golf just the other day. Yeah, I saw that thing. I can't remember what their name is. But yeah, like, I mean, the thing about the women's sports stuff is it is kind of a case of, I have mentioned it a few times with Samantha B. Like I had a video. It was interesting because it was a video that like I had like some major visual glitches. So and like the audio was pretty bad, so I know it was a whole thing. But yeah. So I guess the answer is I could. I think there was like two issues with it. On the one hand, it's like a lot of the time it can get into the nitty gritty. Two, my general response to it is that I find the whole thing a bit weird anyway, because for some reason when it comes to the sports thing, most of the time they're not even defending the trans ID point, because they're like the thing is, when it comes to sports, for some reason every TRA becomes a transmedicalist, right? Like it's always about the question of, does, like all of the hormones and estrogen and all that kind of stuff make a difference to somebody's ability to perform in sports, which is irrelevant because they don't even believe, like most of them don't believe that you need to go on estrogen to be considered a woman anyway. Yeah, Natalie Ryan. Yeah, I do know that. But yeah, I just thought of a good way to I say a good a good way. I just thought of a way to misgender somebody. If they have like a surname that's like a male name, you could just say it like you're kind of reading off a register, like Ryan, Natalie. Boom. That's a good way of doing it. Yes, I did see the pic of the two male cyclists and the woman holding her baby. Yeah, that's a good picture. But and that kind of leads me to the other thing, which is I feel like the sports thing is a very easy point to kind of pique people on. And you might be like, well, if it's a really easy point, then why not talk about it? But I think like my attitude towards it is, see, one of my concerns is this. I don't actually want to go for the easy peaks because I'm genuinely concerned about the idea of getting a measured victory that simply offsets things. Like, basically we win on the sports point or we win on the trans in kids point, and then everyone just goes away and is like, okay, that's fine. But we don't actually address the underlying problem with kind of just the reality denial going on. So I feel like we just like things would come back. So I feel like for me, it's kind of like, while yeah, I'm not saying I would never talk about the sports stuff because I have spoken about it before, but yeah, I mean, someone's saying the top two peaking arguments sports and trans kids, but yeah, like my thing is like I'm kind of like I want to be saying going even more. I want to be in the forward operating base. I want to be attacking the core of it so that when the tide starts to turn, there can already be some groundwork of like, yeah, don't forget everything else they're saying is nonsense too. Okay, I should probably record an outro. I mean, in theory, we're approaching the end of, so we're 2 hours in, which is, so, okay, well, I'll record the outro first real quick. Okay. Okay, everyone, so that is the end of part, is this, I guess this might be the end of part 6. I'm just trying to think. It depends how I edit it down, whatever. But we're done with, oh, actually, I can't say that because I don't know where we are, so I just say, because, yeah, I'm not sure whether or not I'll edit it down. Like, you probably noticed, but yeah, sorry, this is not going in the outro itself. This is me talking to the stream people. Like, the actual length of the stream can obviously be wildly different from the length of the completed video, and therefore I like to have the completed videos be the same length, so it's often like the videos will span multiple streams, which you probably noticed. So I don't actually know what this will be the outro for. So I guess I just, I'm just going to repeat again. Okay, everyone, so that's the end of the video. And I think this was part 6, but I'm not quite sure. And obviously, there we go. I'm not sure how long we've got to go, but should be fun. And apart from that, I'll just say, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Let me know what you think, etc., etc. I don't know. Share this with your local mum, I'll say, which may not be relevant to what was actually in this video, but either way, you should share the whole series with your local mum, because Caelan really went in on mums in this series, and I feel like they need to know that somebody's got their back. With that said, I'll just say, if you want to get my back, you can PayPal and Patreon, and that's it right now, probably. I really do need to get the super chats at some point. But I'll just say, apart from that, thank you to my current patrons. Boom, boom, boom. I want you in my room. We'll spend the night together from now until forever. Let's have some fun. So yeah, I just want to say, like, this is an aside thing. It's kind of funky that we've managed to, because usually I aim for just over 2 hours with the streams, because I mean that's the battery life of this little baby boy. But yeah, it's kind of convenient we happen to just finish the thing. So yeah, let's just actually, I'm not going to show you it. We're not going to watch any of it. But part 3, okay, that's interesting. So part 3 is called Mask Off. And racism, homophobia, misogyny, ableism, and then it kind of ends. So how long is this relative to the Lord of the Rings trilogy? I'd rather react to that. Yeah, sports. But yeah, so I feel like the fact that the women recently won the Euros, like it's an interesting thing. Like it's kind of interesting because obviously, Turf Island, all that, and like basically we had the Alison Bailey victory, we had Tavistock closing, and then we had women winning the Euros in the UK, or the English women's football team winning the European Cup. So it's like, oh, there we go. It's going to happen at some point. That's fine. We're past the recording phase anyway. So yeah, with that said, it's kind of like, I don't know. It like kind of makes that connection between like women's sports and the whole trans thing like extra kind of. It's almost poetic. When they make the biopic about taking out, or I don't know if it would be a biopic, but just like a generic historical drama about the defeat of trans identity. I feel like they'll have to include that little thing of like, and like people won't even believe it. They'll be like, oh, isn't it weird that all of those things happened all at the same time? Anyway, what are we on about? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess I was just going to say that, yeah, I think I already kind of said this, that it's convenient that, yeah, we just finished part 2. So yeah, we've only got the final part, and the final part is the shortest part. The final part is only an hour and 17 minutes. It's going to be so good. It's going to be so good. We're going to get it. Yeah. You know what's wild? So something I have noticed, like it's fun doing this, and I love it more than life itself. But it's interesting that these streams, like for some reason, when I render edited streams, only, yeah, it takes so long to render, which is actually kind of like in my head, I still have some concept of like, oh, I upload videos on Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. Because that was like the thing. It was like Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, I upload videos. But now, the main thing throwing it off has been just how long it takes to render videos. My most recent video has been rendering for 6 hours and 52 minutes, and it's at 98%. So it's going to have taken 7 hours to render, which like in some sense is like fine because it's like, well, it's literally entirely passive. King should do GCSMR. Okay, guys, so today we're going to be disassembling the camera so we can charge it. First of all, we're going to take out this little cable here, make sure it's nice and ready, and then we're going to pop out the little I don't know thing. Yeah, that's the kind of jerky sounds we like, and then we're just gonna screw this and see if it makes a sound. This isn't good at all. And then we're gonna put this there, something like that. Oh, okay, now we screwed up because we're stupid idiots who are terrible at everything we try. And then we're going to just flick open the thing. Oh, that was a good sound, very satisfying. And we're just gonna pop out the battery, and be sure to appreciate its warmth, its post-recording warmth. This isn't as bad as the eating ASMR. Today we're going to do the flossing our teeth ASMR. We're going to get a small roll of floss because we don't actually want to waste it, because we are just doing this for fun. And we're only going to floss the front of our teeth. Be sure to get the floss stuck in your teeth. Okay, I should have got more. Like this is, I can't really get a grip on it, I look like a cat who's got into the sewing kit or something. Anyway, let's be real here. What? Oh no, someone just logged on. This is what happens at the end of the streams. By the way, speaking of, I started it off talking about the fact there was a pigeon in my garden, and I just wanted to let everyone know that there was a pigeon in my garden and it flew off. It was the chubsiest, ubsiest little pigeon, and I came down and I was like, "There's a pigeon in the garden," and I was like, "Why isn't it moving?" Because usually birds fly away, and I kind of got closer and closer, and it kept on moving, and now I was right next to it. I was like, "Hello, chubsy, ubsy pigeon," and it just stayed there, and I was like, "Oh God, is something wrong with it?" Usually birds leave. And so I gave it some seeds. But then it didn't eat them. It didn't eat the seeds, and it didn't eat the water I gave it either. It didn't eat the water, drink. But I left it and it disappeared. Maybe it's a pet. It didn't seem like a pet. It seemed like a little wood pigeon. No, it was so chubby, and I think it was looking like super chubby, and I think after a while I realized it was trying to puff itself up to be more intimidating because it was scared of me. But I was just like, it's so cute. I was like, like that. Okay, that's my angry puffed up pigeon. It's good, classic. Take a picture. I already did take a picture. I will show you the picture. It was the only way I know how. Failing. Trying to think of a solution. Where's my phone, man? Have I got it? Oh wait, here it is in my pocket. Let's turn this on. But the battery's almost flat. I got a cool, quick snap. Oh shit. The battery is flat. Today I have achieved absolutely now. In just being out of the house, I've lost out. If I wanted to end up with more now, I should have just stayed in bed like I know how. As a gay guy, I would absolutely marry you. That's apparently like the comment I got. So thank you, gay guy. Who should we send? So one of the ways that I'll transfer a photo from my computer from my phone to my computer is sending it to some random person on Facebook, and I think we'll send it to Dildo. That's what I call my friend Dylan. It's pretty original, I know. Okay, I took a few videos of it, but I don't want to show you videos because I think that would. So send. I'll send him some a message so he appreciates the context. Fat pigeon. There we go. So then we go onto this site called Facebook. Oh, sorry, Meta. Then we just what you want to do is you want to go onto Bing. You just type Meta into Bing, and then you. This isn't working. Oh, there you go. So then you do copy image address, and this should work. Okay. So let me do add browser. Get ready to see the fattest little pigeon you've ever seen. Ah, fat pigeon. Oh crap! I moved myself. That's my fat pigeon I became very good friends with. Hello, my name is Fat Pigeon. How are you doing today? How are you? Please come and give me seats. I would like to hang out in. Tell you what, check out the effects of the drought. Oh dear. Climate change. I don't even know if it's I don't want to be one of those people that every single time there's anything that happens with weather, it must be climate change. But, you know, still, it's pretty fun to blame climate change. But yeah, it's been like so droughty here. So, could be full of eggs. Could be. What a chubsy. Hello, how are you doing? I would like to remind you to like this video for the big fat pigeon. Well, you know, I don't know. I assumed it was a pigeon. I mean, aren't doves a kind of pigeon? Maybe it's a dovegeon. A dudgeon. Okay, so the pigeon is going to go away now. Say bye-bye, pigeon. Bye-bye, pigeon. Yeah, well, I made sure, so it did disappear, and I was kind of making sure to search for any evidence of a violent disappearance, and it seems as if it had just decided to fly off of its own accord. Well, I suppose that's it. The one thing we don't want to do is get the guitar out, because then we'll be here all night. No, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. Okay, we're going to go. All right, everybody. Goodbye. Thank you for coming here to my live stream. I will see you all. If it's Friday tomorrow, right? So I'll see you tomorrow. It's definitely Friday. Yeah, it's Friday. So yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. But possibly not Saturday, maybe not Sunday. Hello. We just finished rendering. All right, bye.